Hello. So in this video, we're going to talk about APA in-text citations. So with APA formatting, as with MLA and Chicago style, there are two major branches of the citations. There's in-text citations and there's references citations. I'll talk about references lists in another video. But basically, in-text citations are the things that you encounter in the body of the essay itself that tells you where this information comes from. There's a number of different variables that go into APA in-text citations, but I'm going to talk you through some of the most basic, the most common citation techniques in APA. So the first one is when you have a single author for a text. Now, in this case, this can be a book, this can be a journal article, whatever kind of source it is. When you have one author, what you're going to do, basically, you have two options. One is attribution and the other is a parenthetical citation. So attribution is going to look like this. According to Citation, parentheses 2021, policies to improve, blah, 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 rest of the quote. And then at the end, in parentheses, P period 1074. So what we've got here is three elements, three things. First, the author's last name. This is the key piece of identifying information. This would be on the references list, what you would scan down the side of that list for in order to find the entry. Then we've got the date of publication. So that's the date that this book, article, news story, whatever it is that you're citing, this is the year that this came out. That's a key component of APA format that, for instance, in MLA, we don't use. APA is very concerned with the dates of publication, in part because in the social sciences, the stakes are much higher for having the most current information available. Whereas in the humanities and the arts, where we're more likely to use MLA, the stakes are lower for having the most current information. So those are your first two components. And then the third component, I'll talk about in more detail in just a little bit, would be the page number or numbers where this specific information comes from. So that's attribution. Basically, you've incorporated the author's name followed by the date in parentheses into your own sentence. So that's one way of doing it. The other way of doing this is a full parenthetical citation, which is going to look more like this. One recent trend in special education is that policies to improve blah, 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 rest of the quote. And then at the end, in parentheses, Citation, 2021, P period 1074, close parentheses. So in this case, the sentence, your sentence itself, before the quotation, does not tell us where this information comes from. We don't have that attribution to the author and the date, and so that information goes fully into the parentheses. Author, last name, date of publication, page number, or page range. Same thing. So those are the two basic options. That's the most fundamental elements of APA citation, essentially. In the social sciences and the hard sciences, which is what the disciplines that APA is most likely to be used in, you often have multi-authored studies. So there's a couple of different ways of approaching this. One is if you have just two authors. The other is if you have three or more authors. So if you have two authors, this is what it's going to look like. And this is a full parenthetical citation. In the past, quote, educators have used, et cetera, parentheses, in this case, B. Cook and S. Cook, 2011, P period 71. All that information divided by commas. So in this case, we have two authors, and because they have the same last name, the way you cite that in APA is you give us the first initial. So if this was Cook and Brown, this would be Cook ampersand Brown. So that's one thing here. In APA citations, you use an ampersand rather than writing out and, as you might do in some other citation styles. When you have two authors with the same last name, you're going to give us their first initial before their last name so that we can distinguish them. And then again, year of publication is crucial. Page number, if this is information that comes from a specific page. By contrast, if you have three or more authors, this is what it's going to look like. According to Morgan et al., 2015, minorities are generally underrepresented in special education classrooms. So because this source has like 7 authors or something like that, you list the primary author's last name. So that's the first person listed on the author's list, followed by this term et al., et space al period. And then because I'm doing this as attribution, according to Morgan et al., it's followed up in parentheses by the year of publication. Now, the other thing that's worth noting here is because this sentence is a general summary of what this article does rather than specific information that comes from a particular page, I don't have a page number included. And that's actually a standard thing in APA. If the information that you are citing comes from a specific page, so things like quotations, things like statistics, charts or tables or graphs or anything like that, if you are pointing to something that is on a specific concrete page, you cite to that page or that page range. If not, if you're just sort of giving us a summary or giving us a broad assessment of what these authors are doing, or this author, individual author, whatever it is, then you don't need to include a page citation. But that's the big difference in terms of citing 2 authored works versus 3 or more authored works, is that for 2 authors, both of them are going to be listed with an ampersand. For 3 or more, you list the primary author followed by et al. Et al, incidentally, comes from the Latin. It basically means and everybody else. As I said above, when you're citing a specific piece of information, give us a page number or a page range. If you are summarizing the article or making a general point about it, you don't need to include that in APA. If the information that you're giving us is only on one page, use P period in front of the page. If it's a page range, like a quote that goes over a page break, or if you're looking at a chart that goes over multiple pages or something like that, you would use PP period and then give the page range. So that just indicates single page versus multiple pages. One thing that you often may do in APA work, particularly in literature reviews, is to cite multiple sources within the same citation. So if you are, for instance, assessing, or if you're trying to give the state of the field and you have a bunch of people who have made related arguments, you may cite all of them in the same parenthetical citation. So, for instance, there are many problems at the intersection of special education and race or ethnicity. And then in the parenthetical citation, I've got Morgan et al., comma, 2015, semicolon, Citron, comma, 2021, close parentheses. So there we've got 2 sources that address the same broad topic. And so I'm citing both of them in the same thing. The parenthetical citations basically will look the same as a regular parenthetical citation. Author's last name or authors' last names, if you've got 2, primary author et al., whatever it is, and then the date of publication. But then you divide entries with a semicolon. Fairly straightforward. The other thing to note when you are citing multiple sources like this is you list them in alphabetical order. So this would be the same order that they are found in on the works cited page, or the references page. Sorry, in APA we use references. I'm basically an MLA guy. You're going to cite them in the same order you would cite them in the references page. So Morgan et al. Comes before Cetrin, M comes before S. Easy peasy. So that's the broad set of things that you probably will need to know for like the types of papers you would write in APA format first as a student. There are more different sort of gradations and things like this, different variations. Things like citing a source with no author listed, citing to a corporate author, citing to more than, I actually addressed multiple authors with the same last name, multiple works by the same author in the same year, et cetera, et cetera. These things have specific approaches that they take. But my suspicion is, for the most part, as a student writer, you'll probably not run into those things too much. If you are running into those things, two good sources that I would recommend: a current APA guidebook. And APA has a number of different guidebooks that take you through how to cite those sources. And actually a lot of introductory composition books, textbooks for like first-year writing classes and things like this will also include breakdowns of how to cite in MLA format. So that will have that information as well. But the other one that's really, really useful is the Purdue OWL APA guide. And I'll put a link to that actually in the description below this video. That's a free resource created by Purdue University, their online writing lab, which is what OWL stands for. And the Purdue OWL has really good information about a bunch of different citation formats. So that's a really good resource to use. So again, this was a basic breakdown of APA citations and in-text citations and the way that these things work. The last thing I want to remind you about with APA citations, as with any citation style, is that everything that is cited in the text needs to align with something listed in the works cited, in the references page. So if you cite something in text, there must be an entry for that on the references list. And if something is on the references list, it should be cited somewhere in the text of the essay.